Sam Moll, out. Frankie Montas, in. Mike Ford, unemployed. Nick Martini still has a job. What in the world are the Cincinnati Reds doing with this roster? We're talking about it on today's Locked On Reds.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds. Thanks so much for joining us here today. My name is Jeff. His name is Steve, and we are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. Locked On Reds is, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team, your Cincinnati Reds, every single day, all throughout the season, win or lose, all throughout the offseason. We are here for you all the time because we love talking Reds, and we're happy to be talking Reds with you. Thank you for joining us on today's podcast. If you are brand new, I encourage you, please subscribe. We are going to be with you all season long. And if you're an everydayer, you've already subscribed and all that great stuff, thank you so much for that. We appreciate our everydayers, you guys and gals, or it makes this show go. And on today's show, we are going to look at who needs this Diamondback series the most. It's a pretty obvious answer, but we'll get to it a little bit later on in the show. And we will also discuss what on earth do you do with Jeimer Candelario. Before we do that, though, we are going to start, of course, first with the movements and the machinations of the roster and the reasoning behind some of it. We'll try to explain it here on today's Locked On Reds podcast that is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use code all lowercase LockedOnMLB for a first deposit match of up to $100. And Steve, where we will begin today's episode is the weirdness of how the Reds have decided to control their roster, because some of the moves here recently have made sense? Question mark?
No, they have not made sense. There's a couple of these moves to pick apart. Where do you want to start? Guide the ship here, Jeff. Do you want to start with
we definitely got to
Mike Ford? Do you want to start with Sam Moll?
Let's start with Sam Moll, because
okay. So
Frankie Montas coming back is good. Sam Moll going down makes no sense.
So here's the thing. I mean, Frankie Montas coming back is great. It's a total bolster to the Reds rotation. Yes. I love it. I love moving Nick Martinez back into the bullpen. We've seen him out of the bullpen already before Montas has even made his way back. We've seen Martinez out of the bullpen. I like it. Here's the problem. They sent Sam Moll down in order to make room for Frankie Montas. All as Sam Moll has done in his 5 games back on the Reds active roster is put up a 0.00 ERA.
How many runs is that?
That's 0, Jeff. That is, he didn't give up any. He struck out 4 while walking 1. His strikeouts per 9 is 7.2. His walks per 9, 1.8. Sam Moll has been great out of this Reds bullpen in a very limited sample size. Yes, I give you 5 games. I understand that you have to talk about the options, and what I'm talking about is minor league options. Sam Moll has them. They can send him to Louisville and not risk losing him. The truth of the matter is, and I don't remember where I saw you post this, Jeff, and so I'm sorry if I'm outing you if this was in our private chat. I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw you say something about it should have been Buck Farmer, right? And I'm looking at Buck Farmer's stats, a 3.06 ERA, 17.2 innings pitched. His strikeouts per 9, 7.1, walks per 9, 2.5. I don't think it should have been Buck Farmer. It should have been Emilio Pagan. Emilio Pagan with his 5.93 ERA and 13 innings pitched. His walks per 9 is fine. It's 3.3. His strikeouts per 9 is fine, but he's been uninspiring. If I had to pick somebody right now in this bullpen that should have been the first man out, it's him, but he doesn't have options. So Sam Moll is a victim to the current collective bargaining agreement.
I think Buck Farmer, Emilio Pagan, it's 6-1, half dozen the other. Like, the point is, Sam Moll deserves to be on this roster.
Yes.
Sam Moll, since becoming a Red, has an ERA of 0.36. There is no 1, there is no 2, there is no 3. It's 0. Since becoming a Red, he has become arguably the most reliable relief pitcher consistently since the trade deadline last year. I do not understand this, and I get it. The whole idea, well, you got to keep organizational depth. You got to make sure that you use your options when you have them. Why? Give me the best 26 men. You're not going to go into the playoffs touting organizational depth. You get to the playoffs with your best 26 guys. And Buck Farmer, the reason I picked him, and we can go back and forth on Buck Farmer and Emilio Pagan. It's all, neither here nor there, because
I have
they're
one more
both
name.
still here.
One more name before you finish that thought. One more name. The other guy that should be in the conversation is Lucas Sims.
No, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree? 6.10 ERA. He's giving up 2.6 home runs per 9 innings. His walk rate is 7.8 per 9 right now, Jeff. He is not having a good season.
How many scoreless appearances does he have?
Oh, stop it. No. We're talking about cumulative stats here.
There's only one multi-run appearance that he's had. ERA for relievers this early in the season is a little goofy, and that is my argument.
But not walks per 9. Walks per 9, 7.8.
Yeah, I don't love that. But I still think his upside is much better than either Buck Farmer or Emilio Pagan. I think that Buck Farmer should be sent down because he is only pitched since opening day. He is only pitched in games that are completely out of reach, whether the Reds be well ahead or the Reds be behind to the point that it does not matter. Whenever Buck Farmer comes out of the bullpen, the Reds are either way in it, like they're winning this game, period, or they're losing this game, period. So he's pitching in low leverage situations. So his statistics are a little buffed by that. But also, I look at what Sam Moll brings to the table, and I just say, like, if we were to argue yesterday on who the most reliable relief pitcher is in this bullpen, he would be a part of that argument. And you cannot tell me that there is a realm of reality that makes sense that one of the most reliable relief pitchers is now down in Triple-A simply because he had options. I understand there's a game there. Anyway, that's our point. Makes no sense. Because options, that's really what, do options win ball games? Do options get you to the playoffs? No. Players do. Good players do. Sam Moll's a good player. He should be up here. The other thing, because you mentioned it at the top of this segment, top of this tirade, Mike Ford being allowed to grant his release because he opted out of his minor league deal. He's crushing the ball in Louisville, and he's like, look, I need to be on the major league team, so I'm going to opt out. You have a couple of days to either add him to the active roster or grant him his release. And they granted him his release with multiple guys taking up spots in this lineup that, granted, with the return of one TJ Friedl imminent, won't be as big of a deal. But do we know what we have in Nick Martini? Do we know what we have in Mike Ford? I think I'm going with the unknown quantity here because we don't know what we have with Mike Ford.
Yeah, I this was a no-brainer for me. I really was stunned that they did not call up Mike Ford and send Nick Martini down, bearing in mind that Nick Martini has options. So they would not have been losing anybody. You send Martini down, who's clearly struggling. Whether he can find it again or not, I don't know. But he's clearly struggling right now. You send him down to Louisville, hope that he figures something out. And in the meantime, see what Mike Ford can give you. And then if Mike Ford can give you nothing, you're still going to release him. It's perfectly fine. You can bring Martini back up or Friedl is back. Lots of options. When they did nothing, I think that's probably the biggest head scratcher thus far this season. I think that bothers me more than them not making a move when both CES and Tyler Stevenson were banged up and they were playing shorthanded. I think this bothers me more than that because we don't know what we let walk away in Mike Ford. We do know what Nick Martini is, and Nick Martini is a guy that had a great opening day, and that's it. He's had nothing great since opening day. I would have liked to seen what Ford could have done.
I always wonder about this because there are plenty of guys that have opening day performances that we laud, that we always say, man, those were great opening day performances. They won that game for the Reds. How many of those guys are then put into conversations for best at their position, or somebody that you would put on an all-time Reds team, or you would put in the honorable mention of an all-time Reds team? The answer is not very many of them, because the reason that they have really great opening day performances is that we're not expecting that to happen. We weren't expecting Nick Martini to go crazy, and we will always have that. We will always have that memory. But to continually run him out there every day and say, Mike Ford, we don't need you, and your veteran experience and your ability to hit the long ball. No, that made no sense to me either. And I feel like that one makes less sense than the Sam Moll options one, because at least there was an explanation to it. Letting Mike Ford go when you have no body in Triple-A that you really trust to call up on the positional side of things. Like, name somebody that you really trust. Anyway, I don't feel there's the guy. And Mike Ford was the only guy that you could even sort of squint at and say, he could probably help the Reds. I thought that was a weird one too. So look, we have praised this team. We have said that they made good moves in the offseason, that they did things right, and they did this and that. Could they have gotten a right-handed outfield bat? Absolutely. But for the most part, they had a good offseason. Here at the beginning of the season, the roster movement has been very, very confusing.
All right. Speaking of roster movements, Jeff, you and I had a conversation while I was in Texas, and we talked about one Jeimer Candelario. You told me that I needed to chill out on Jeimer Candelario, that he was going to be fine. I think it's time to revisit that conversation, and we're going to do that coming up next.
I have the absolute best daily fantasy sports app for you for this baseball season. It's PrizePicks. You got to check out this app. I'm telling you, it's super easy to play daily fantasy with your favorite baseball players. And they've got all your favorite stats, whether you're talking about hits, homers, pitcher strikeouts, first inning runs scored. You've got total bases. All the great stuff can be found over at PrizePicks. And you can get in on the action today. Just download the app and use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, to get a first deposit match of up to $100. And the best way to really take advantage of this, I mean, PrizePicks you can win up to 100 times your money. You can turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. And you can do it with Ellie De La Cruz. I mean, there's so many different statistical numbers that you can go more or less on, because that's how it works over at PrizePicks. Again, download the app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, to get a first deposit match of up to $100. Code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, on the PrizePicks app today. Get that first deposit match of up to $100, and then all you got to do is click more or click less. It's that easy. Today's episode is also brought to you by one of the most fun games I've ever played. Because if you download Monopoly Go, not only will you join the over 150 million people that do, but you will find the joy that is becoming a Monopoly tycoon on your phone, because it's the classic Monopoly Go game, or a classic Monopoly game on your phone, but with a lot of awesome twists, like leaderboards where you can compare your progress with all your friends, or you can, really challenge your friends by knocking down their landmarks with a wrecking ball. You can heist their banks and grab their cash. You can also join with them in community chest events and some other great community events to help you rise up that leaderboard, become that the Monopoly tycoonist that we all know you can be. But of course, you're going to have to catch me up at the top, because I love that Monopoly game. Monopoly Go is free on the App Store and Google Play, so go download it today and start playing with your friends. Start taking their cash with Monopoly Go. Again, it's free on the Apple Store, Apple App Store, and Google Play.
If you have not checked out Locked On Sports today, you are missing out. If you're tired of all the yelling over at ESPN or Fox Sports /news/sports or whatever is going on over there, if you're tired of all the yelling, get over to Locked On Sports today on YouTube. It's a streaming 24/7 channel that is programmed just for you to bring you all of the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news that you are seeking in the sports world. It streams 24/7 on YouTube for free and also on the Amazon Fire TV channels app. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And I'm hoping that they had a breaking news story yesterday that saw one Joe Burrow throwing a football with no ill effects. Super Bowl, baby. I'm just going to say it right now. Super Bowl. Get over to Locked On Sports today on YouTube or the Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, Jeffrey, Jeimer Candelario. We talked about him while I was down in Texas. I was super concerned after seeing him live. You told me that even though he went 0 for 8 with 7 strikeouts, that I needed to chill out, that he was going to be okay. I think it's time to revisit this conversation. I am not by any means saying that the Reds are going to cut him in his 2-year contract that they just signed 1 month in. I think you made a great point about that on yesterday's show. But I am concerned about Jeimer Candelario.
No, and I am too. This is the time of year where you really start to look at players who are struggling and you're like, okay, where can I find the peripheral that sort of points in the opposite direction, saying that he's going to look better? CES, plenty of those peripherals. Tyler Stevenson, plenty of those peripherals, and he is starting to really climb that average up and the on base and all that good stuff, the slugging as well. Will Benson, even good peripherals. Jeimer Candelario has nothing. And we talked about this before. Baseball Savant, one of our favorite websites to reference when it comes to these peripherals, has red or blue. Makes it easy for, guys like us that really, when maths comes into it, we need somebody to explain it like we're 5. Red or blue. Red good, blue bad. Lots of blue for Jeimer Candelario. In fact, it's all blue. There is no red on his profile right now for Baseball Savant. And then you add in the fact that the eye test, he is getting beat. If it is a breaking ball low, and it doesn't even necessarily have to be low and away because he's a switch hitter, so you really don't get a breaking ball that breaks low and away from him. But if it's a breaking ball that drops out of the zone, he's swinging at it, like pretty much every time. And then when he makes contact on other pitches, it seems to be off contact. He's not barreling anything up. He's not centering it with the bat, not getting good contact on it. The average exit velocity is horrid. All of it is pointing to the fact that he might not really be getting that unlucky. The problem with all of this, though, is, Steve, what is the end game? Because as it is right now, and I mentioned it yesterday, and I appreciate you mentioning that I mentioned it, but I'll mention that I mentioned that you mentioned that I mentioned, they're not going to get rid of him.
They're not going to get rid of him. Let me ask you this. You don't have his stats in front of you, do you?
Not currently, but I can.
Okay, no, don't pull him up. Don't pull him up. If you had to guess at his OPS plus right now for the season, where would you put it?
62.
Okay. I feel that way as well. However, he's at 79. He's 21% below league average. Not great, but he's not as bad as it feels right now. And I think part of our problem, your problem, my problem, everyone in Reds country's problem right now is we had all of these expectations that we have not had ever before, or at least not in decades. We haven't had these expectations. We have them now. And therefore it feels worse than it really, really is. Because if we want to just take some OPS pluses, Jeff, and talk about the guys that really aren't delivering on this team, you mentioned some of the names. Jeimer Candelario, 79 OPS plus right now. CES, 46. Stewart, best shape of his life, Fairchild, 39. Nick Martini, who we've talked about today, 48. Santiago Espinal, getting all of this playing time because of injuries and suspensions. His OPS plus, 32. Luke Maile, for whatever reason, who continues to play over Tyler Stevenson, his OPS plus is 30 compared to Tyler's 99. I don't understand what the Reds are doing with this lineup. Someone wake David Bell up. He clearly has no clue what's going on. So I know you wanted this to be a segment just about Jeimer and what he's doing. I am disappointed in Jeimer. Jeimer's here on a 2-year deal, big money. They're not going to cut him. And who the hell are you going to play if you set him down? Until somebody comes back from injury or suspension, Jeimer Candelario is going to play every day. And all as we can do is accept it and hope that he figures it out. But in the meantime, can we please, for the love of God, fix some of these other things? Let's play Tyler Stevenson 6 out of 7 days right now. 99 OPS plus compared to 30 for Luke Maile. Can we, for the love of God, please start putting people in positions to be successful?
I think it's funny because whenever Tyler Stevenson plays, he bats like 4th or 5th. And then whenever Luke Maile plays, they're trying to hide him as low as they possibly can in the lineup.
Yes.
So they know, and that makes me think that it is more important for them to start the guy that has a better relationship with the starting pitcher than it is to put an automatic out in the lineup, which I don't necessarily agree with, but I don't understand the nuances of a pitcher-catcher relationship. There's probably more to it than that we don't necessarily get. But the other guys, and I talked about this whenever they said that, TJ Friedl could be back during the series, which granted, I love that for the team. What I don't know about that is for TJ Friedl. I hope that he is fine and that the wrist is good and he's recovering perfectly fine and this isn't that big of a deal. But you bring him back, you can create a right-handed lineup or a lineup against right-handed pitchers where your outfield is Fraley, Friedl, Benson. And then you have Spencer Steer to move to the infield. And you could either have Jeimer Candelario as a DH or Jonathan India as a DH, and you take out Santiago Espinal and Stuart Fairchild from that lineup. And then if it's a lineup where Tyler Stevenson starts, then Luke Maile's out of it too. So you're moving those OPS plus guys to the bench, and you're featuring the guys that you should be. So I do like how the lineup could move with TJ Friedl back, but you're right. Like the breakouts and the unluckiness that I've seen from CES and from Will Benson really do need to start being a breakout soon, because as it is right now, it's a very broken down, not breakout.
Yeah, and I think it's fair. Let's spend just a minute, Jeff, on TJ Friedl, because again, I wasn't on. I was wrapped up in the ER there. Couldn't talk about that. Thanks for carrying it solo. Great show yesterday. TJ Friedl, should he be activated yesterday? Yes, I think so. Here's the question. The only question that Nick Krall should be asking TJ Friedl when he gets him on the phone is, yo, TJ, does your wrist hurt? If the answer to that question is no, call him up, because a rusty TJ Friedl is better than continuing to run Stewart, the best shape of his life, Fairchild's 39 OPS plus out there. It's just better. Get TJ Friedl up here. He can shake off the rust at the big league level as long as his wrist does not hurt. I would assume that that's the case. We have not heard any reports of that. I am all for activating him, Jeff, because even if he comes up and struggles, it can't be worse than what the Reds have been doing.
Yeah, and I was trying to look up and see if there was any more reports about that. And as of recording here on Monday night, there isn't. But I will also say this, in Triple-A, his very limited time in Triple-A, but in Triple-A, he's had a couple of extra base hits. He's gotten some walks, looking pretty good. And all of the reports behind the scenes is that during his entire time with the cast and all that other stuff, he's still been running. And I think that, it was his non-throwing hand, so he's still been throwing. So he's literally done every single thing possible to make sure that this is a very quick process. And I'm with you. I mean, there is no time to wait for him to hit a certain number or get a certain number of hits or a certain number of walks or something like that in AAA and then say, okay, you are ready. The only question is, how are you recovering? And if the answer is good, he needs to be up here. Because The Reds now start a series with the Arizona Diamondbacks that made the World Series last year after beating out the Reds to just get into the playoffs as that final wild card spot last year. Who needs this series the most? The answer is kind of obvious, but it might still surprise you. If you're like me and you put things off to the last minute, then DoorDash is going to be your friend, especially when it comes to Mother's Day this weekend. Yeah, it's this weekend, by the way. Just in case you haven't gotten anything for mom, use DoorDash today and add some convenience to the way that you shop. Plus, you can get her exactly what she wants because they've got all range of selection of gift cards. I mean, if your mom is a bookworm, they got bookstore gift cards. If she loves coffee, get her some gift card to her favorite coffee place so she can get exactly what she wants. Plus, you can order flowers on DoorDash as well. And they've got a great promo code for you. It's Locked On MLB. You'll save 50% off your next order, up to $15 when you spend $15 or more on your next flower, convenience, grocery, or retail order now on DoorDash. Code Locked On MLB. It's going to help you. It's going to help save you time and money this Mother's Day with DoorDash. Check it out today. You can catch every pitch of the Reds' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM. Just download the SXM app and search the word Reds. And also check out si.com/MLB/Reds for some written content about your Cincinnati Reds. I'm writing there. Steve's writing there. James Rapine, Caleb Sisk, a lot of great folks, Austin Elmore, and Rick Uccino as well, writing Reds stuff over at si.com/MLB/Reds. And Steve, before we jump into this Arizona series here, I wanted to give a quick shout out. This picture behind me, the Marty and Joe picture, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're listening at home, there's a picture behind me of Marty and Joe. It's actually kind of like it's like a painting or a drawing. I think it's like drawing with like color pencils and stuff like that. It's really awesome. It was given to me by a friend of mine named Doug. And I would ask that everybody send out some good vibes, Sam. He is in the hospital, got a lot going on right now, and just send some good vibes. If you send prayers to my friend Doug. I would really appreciate it if you do. And really, as we kind of get into this, the Reds and the Diamondbacks coming up, both these teams really enter this series on a disappointing note. The Diamondbacks actually have a worse record than the Reds do right now, and they have been dealing with as many injuries as the Reds have, if not more. In fact, I do a lot more in-depth analysis on this coming up here later on today with Locked On Diamondbacks host Millard Thomas. We really take a deep dive into this series. You're going to want to check that out. But I do want to spend a few moments here, Steve, at the end of the podcast, kind of looking at who needs this series the most, because it feels like there's a lot of players on this team that could really change the narrative around their season if they have a good series.
You know, it's hard, Jeff, because from our Reds focus lens, the Reds absolutely need this series. Being freshly off of a sweep from the Orioles, the Reds really need to take this series. You know, I was telling you before we started recording, the Reds need to win this series. They need to take 2 of 3 from the Diamondbacks. They just absolutely have to. They're 4 games back right now. It's bad. They need to shift the momentum. But you look at this Arizona Diamondbacks team, and you're right. They're banged up. They're 8 games out of first place in a division that is just not going to relent. 8 games already feels a little insurmountable given what else is in this division. So for the Arizona Diamondbacks, they have to be looking at this series with the Reds and almost salivating. They have to almost be thinking, we got this. And I really hope that is how they're approaching this series, because I hope that the Reds are looking at this series going, we have to get our stuff together right now. And if you've got a team coming in that in the Arizona Diamondbacks is looking past the Reds a little bit, and you've got a Reds team that is recognizing that they're in trouble and they need to get it together, that is a prime opportunity for the Reds to take at least 2 of 3. And I really feel like that needs to be the goal for this series. I'm not asking for a sweep. I'll take one, but I'm not asking for the Reds to sweep the Diamondbacks. This is the team that won the National League last year. I'm not asking for them to sweep them. Win this series. They need to win this series because it's only going to get harder as we go deeper into May. Who needs it the most, Jeff? It's easy to argue it for either or in this scenario, but because this is a Cincinnati Reds podcast and the Cincinnati Reds need to win this division, the Reds need this series because they need to be in a position to make a run when we get everybody back in June. So the Reds need to win this series.
And it's going to be tough. The pitching matchups in this series, while the third game is with a guy that most people have never heard of in Ciccone, the first two pitchers you will have heard of. Zach Gallen, Jordan Montgomery. The Reds are getting probably two of the best, even when they're healthy. Like the Diamondbacks rotation, this is something I talk about with Millard on the show, later on today, is that the Diamondbacks rotation when healthy is just ridiculously good because they also have Eduardo Rodriguez, who we will not see in this series. And they also have, I'm blanking on.
Well, while you're looking for that name, I want to answer back and just say that the Reds have a fresh off the injured list Frankie Montas going today. He's going to be followed by Graham Ashcraft, who has been good every single time out. And then the new and improved ace in the making, Hunter Green, goes on the third game of this series. So I like the way I really like the way the Reds starting pitching is stacking up against Arizona's starting pitching. And you're right. Those first two games, Arizona's got some talent in that rotation, but I do like Frankie Montas and Graham Ashcraft going games 1 and 2.
Merrill Kelly. I don't know why I couldn't come up with that name, but yeah, Merrill Kelly, they will not see him as well because he's also on the IL. Like they've got a lot of dudes hurt. Now they could be having Paul Sewald, their closer, returning. They just got him from the Mariners in the offseason. They could have their center fielder, Alec Thomas, returning in this series. The Diamondbacks are no pushover. Like I know they're coming in down on their luck right now, but this is a good team. And this is a team that I expect to be in the playoff race the rest of the year. So when you look at this and you're going to see the records before tonight's game and you're going to say, this feels like a series that the Reds should win. Just think for one moment, this is a very, very talented Arizona Diamondbacks team. I'm not saying the Reds should win this series as in it's like a given that they're going to. I'm saying they need to win this series. This is something that they have got to get out there and do.
That's fair. They need to win this series, and bear in mind also that they have a second series against the same Arizona Diamondbacks team in Arizona. It's a 4-game series. So when we start talking about tiebreakers, we talked about this when the Reds won the season series against the Phillies. These are important. So if they can take 2 of 3 at home against the Diamondbacks now, and then shoot for a split when they go out to Arizona, again, we're talking about winning a season series because that will be it for the year until the playoffs. So the Reds need this series. I am 100% with you, Jeff.
And it's going to be interesting too, because this series goes directly in to the big one, the big 10-game West Coast road trip where there are no off days during that trip. In fact, there are no off days leading into the trip. The Reds play on Thursday afternoon, and then they play Friday night in San Francisco. So you got to get some good vibes getting on that plane, heading west for what is sure to be just a absolute slog of a series. And the Reds need this series. They need to win this series. That's where we're at with this. I don't think there's moral victories when you win 1 out of 3. You got to win 2 out of 3 here. And that is where we'll end today's podcast. Steve, take her away.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Locked on Reds. Thanks, as always, for making us your first listen every day. Everydayers, we appreciate you so much for being here. Make sure you have clicked all of the buttons, subscribe, notification bell, subscribe in the audio feed so you can take us to the gym with you. We want to talk Reds with you, and the only way we can do that is if we're in your feeds. So make sure you click those buttons. Coming up, we're going to continue to talk about this Reds Diamondback series. We're going to break down a start from Frankie Montas and how he looks coming off of the injured list. We're going to gather up all of that information. We're going to bring it back right here to keep you locked on Reds every single day.